Hello and welcome to episode 281 of the Paint All the Minis podcast, the show where you can listen to the widest range of guests I can convince to chat to me about the tabletop gaming hobby. This week I talked to Chris about all the reasons why we both love Space Hulk. Space Hulk is amazing and it's definitely one of my all-time favorite games. I've always had a blast playing it and it's definitely in the top 3 games of my list of most awesome games that I've ever played. It was really fun to shoot the breeze with Chris and listen to what he likes and kind of regale ourselves over the amazing experiences that we've had with Space Hulk. It was definitely a really fun chat, and thanks to Chris for coming on to the show. Short introduction this week and no post ramble, but there's more shows that are slated for recording and they'll be released in due course. Hope you guys are keeping an even keel. Hope you guys are all good. Hope you guys are able to share and celebrate your hobby journeys. You can do that on our Discord server. There's a link to that in the description of the podcast. If you need to email me, you can email paintalltheminis@gmail.com. And that's enough for the pre-ramble. Let's go.
Paint all the minis. Paint all the minis that you can. And when you paint your minis, listen to that podcast with Dan Adams, that is.
I know what you're thinking. Did he paint 6 armies or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this excitement, I've kind of lost track myself. But being that this is Paint All the Minis, the best place for painting and hobby on the internet, and people aren't going to bite your head clean off for posting, you got to ask yourself one question. Do I feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?
So, hey, I am here with Chris. How's it going, Chris?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, absolute pleasure, and thank you for coming on to the show. It's been a long burn. We've been trying to get this booked and in the docket for a long time, right?
Technical difficulties, yeah.
So whereabouts are you from in the US?
I'm from Pennsylvania, which is East Coast. And I don't really know a whole lot of other like old style gamers in my area. But that's okay. I actually connect with a lot of folks online, and most of my hobby interaction is actually done online.
How'd you find that?
But if I were to find anyone local, of course I'd be up for that.
How'd you find interacting with the online community? Because I'm kind of similar.
How do I find it, or how did I find it?
No, how do you find it? Because I kind of.
How do I find it?
Yeah, I kind of play with a couple of guys locally, but I always
actually
play games
kind
during
of.
the week. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I actually kind of love it. I love being able to interact with friends online, and I think it's because we don't have all that other extraneous stuff. You know, it's not like when I game online with other folks, and I'll probably get into that in our discussion, because I play a lot of remote games.
Yeah.
And when I do that, it's like we're focused on the game, and maybe it's a little bit about my social anxiety or something. I don't know, but I like to, hang out and talk to someone online and play a game where that's the focus of what we're doing, and I don't have to worry about just other stuff. It's like we're zoned in on what we're doing. You know, we're zoned in on our hobby, and I enjoy that.
I quite like gaming online. I do a lot of gaming online as well. I have like a couple of buddies locally that I play with, but I play weekly online, a couple of games a week at least, I would say. Nice. And it's just easier to kind of set up. You don't need to leave the house.
Exactly.
Yes. You can have like a hard cutoff and say, hey man, like I've got a hard cutoff of this time, and it's kind of easier to extract yourself from that. Whereas when I was playing in a game store in the US, it was like quite hard to extract yourself from the situation because you don't want to be rude. Because like once you finished your game, people want to talk a little bit, and then other people see you finish your game, so you need to talk, and that's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong; it just takes a long time. It's nice that people want to talk to you, but it just takes a long time. So that's cool. That's nice.
And in the U.S., distances are much greater, So if you're going to have to travel, an hour to game and then an hour back, playing online I think is really nice. Like you said, it's easy setup, easy tear down, and you're in, you're out, and you're done.
So talk to us a little bit about gaming online then. So what sort of games, other than the game that we're going to talk about, do you play online? And how did you find those games, and how did you find those communities?
Okay, well, it all started back around when I was just kind of getting back into the hobby. It seems like a lot of people do that. They're in the hobby when they're younger. There's a gap when they're out, and then they find themselves at this age, at this time, get the nostalgia feels, and you're back into it. Yeah. And it was around the COVID era that I discovered the Crown of Command podcast, and kind of got involved in that community. And at the time when I heard about the host, Joshua, he had been talking in his podcast about playing some remote games. And I thought, boy, what's that? That sounds interesting. And actually it sounded like a really good opportunity for me to be able to play something without having anyone local that I could connect with. So I actually reached out to him and asked him, some questions about how exactly do you do this? And then I just kind of gave it a whirl. And I think that, maybe Space Hulk was the first game that I played remotely. And since then I branched into playing many others, mostly based on the models that I have painted, because if you're going to play remotely, if you're hosting a remote game, of course you're responsible for everything, the table setup, all the models. So I was kind of limited to what I have, and at this point I've played a lot of stuff, and mostly I'm one of those 90s GW guys, and I'm super focused on that era, those games. I don't really branch out much beyond that. Okay. So, Space Hulk, Man of War, Necromunda, Second Edition 40K. I've played Epic, Warhammer Quest. Just a whole load of games. I'm sure some I'm forgetting. But
so what is it about those games and that era of games that gets you excited?
100% nostalgia. It's the era that I got into the game or into the hobby. I got most excited about it, and flipping through White Dwarf magazines and seeing all the pictures and really wanting to play that. And when I was in the hobby, we had a game store, but it was a bit of a distance to get there, and it was super hard to get coordinated with other people. It seemed like everybody was painting stuff and collecting stuff, but no one was actually playing anything. They were just getting ready for it was more like they fell in love with the idea of playing these games, but never really got around to playing it. And you see that a lot. So that's, I wanted to kind of go back and recreate that, go back to that era of, man, I remember owning this game and looking through it, and didn't really know how to paint models, but
that's cool.
I wanted to, go back and do that again, So that's why I chose those games. Right, properly. Right.
That's cool. And you mentioned like playing remotely. So I think this is different to what I do. I would say I play online, but you say you play remotely, especially when you said you're responsible for the model. So talk us through what you mean by playing remotely.
Right. And I think there's a lot of confusion there, because right away I hear people say, oh, is that like Tabletop Simulator? And then I respond like, I don't even know what Tabletop Simulator is. I've never used that.
It's not that.
No, exactly. Right. It's literally just like any app that pretty much has a camera and a video, which would be, anything from Zoom or Discord or usually Discord is the one that I prefer. And that's because there's that platform where you have a community, and I can be playing a game, and if someone else wants to join in and and watch or even participate or have a chat, I'm totally up with that. And it kind of has that feel like I'm playing a game at a table at a game store maybe, and someone just kind of walks up and is like, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Yeah. So it's a very natural, fluid format that I like doing. And the way, like I said, the way I play is I have a table set up, whether it be something massive or I think the smaller games, like the one we're going to talk about, Space Hulk, is really good for that, because then I can set up a camera at a good angle and keep it static there the whole game, and focus on moving my hands around to move models or roll dice and things, and not have to worry about adjusting for that. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously some challenges as far as making sure that my opponent can properly see everything that he wants to see. And I'm always asking, like, do you need me to move the camera? Do you want me to zoom in? Can you see everything okay? And and I think sometimes I overthink it, but and since I'm playing with my friends, I don't really worry about their dice results. Like if they roll and like, oh, I got 3 6s again. I'm like, okay, great.
So they're rolling in. So they're rolling on their side. Okay.
Yeah, they're rolling on their side, and the more that they can do to feel like they're that they're actually here, that they're involved, is the better. I mean, I think the only time I ever have to roll for someone else's die is if it's like a like a direction die. You know what I mean? Like a scatter or something. Right. Because otherwise we're trying to work out, how do we do that on your end? I'll just roll it on my end.
Yeah. That's cool. And so is there like a kind of handbook to remote play, or is you just kind of like go through it yourself? Okay.
Yeah, we just kind of figure out what works and what doesn't. And so when I'm playing a game with someone, I'm the kind of person who I'm like super non-competitive. I really enjoy the narrative. Like we're kind of playing this together. Like for example, in Space Hulk that we're going to play, or that we're going to talk about, most of the time I'm playing as the Gene Stealers, and my opponent's playing the Marines, because I think that's just a little more interesting for them, And oftentimes I catch myself kind of like cheering for the Marines, because I want the good guys to win, I want this mission to succeed, and the more nail biting it is, the more fun it is. And after we play, sometimes we'll just kind of have a chat about what happened in that game, like the pivotal key moments of like, man, when you rolled that jam die there, man, that was the turning point, in the game. Or do you think things would have been different if you had done this thing instead? So I like that debriefing thing where we kind of talk about it, and maybe next time we play, is there anything that we want to change or do differently? Sometimes we'll play remotely, like linked games, where we'll say, okay, how can we take this game that we just played and expand on it now, going into our next game of what we might want to do. Cool. So I really like that. I really like the working together aspect of remote gaming, where like absolutely we are not like showing up to bash each other with the army list that we made, because for the most part the army lists in a game that we're playing, they're kind of based on the models that I own. Or my opponent owns, if they're hosting a game. Sometimes I'll play with someone and they'll send me a list of all the models they have and say, come up with an army list based on this. But it's not like, you're you're coming up with an army list and it's going to be secret and you're going to be sneaky about it and you're going to like, throw something down and try to catch someone out, you know, because, it's more about providing a mutually enjoyable experience for everybody involved.
Yeah, that's cool, man. That's awesome. That's really, really good. So,
Yeah.
So as we kind of start getting a little bit closer to chatting about the game, let's just talk about your hobby in terms of painting, because you mentioned it a few times, like the models that you own, the models that you paint. So do you paint a lot?
I paint. I paint when I can. I try to paint often. I'm trying to paint more, but I'm one of those like hobby butterflies that will just go from one thing to another, and I'll find myself getting really excited about something, and like I said, some of the things that I'm painting are geared towards upcoming games that I want to play.
Yeah.
So what I did today, I finished painting another model for a fantasy wood elf army, and I have one more model to go, and that army's done. And then I'll be able to move on to the next thing, with the intent that here's this army, it's done, and now I can host a game with it.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's good. So do you take it seriously, or is it just like, when I say seriously, do you take it to the highest level that you can physically get, or are you more like a tabletop painter?
I try to take it to the highest level that I can, and that slows things down.
Sure, yeah.
And it also really affects my mood. Like if I'm painting a model that I really want to try to do well, I get myself a little stressed out about it.
Okay.
And if it doesn't start turning out the way I want to, I'm like, do I just strip this and start over? Do I, And I find that if I try to lower my standards a little bit, maybe, or embrace the mistake, and say, you know what, if I had to do it again, I probably would have done that differently, but that's just the way this model turned out, so I'm okay with that.
I quite like that.
It helps my mood, and it helps me go faster, and
I'm like that, and I quite like looking back in those minis. Maybe you forget about it and you move on, and you kind of playing a game with it maybe months down the line, and you look at it and you kind of just appreciate it as a snapshot in time.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Right. It's like a little time capsule, of like, and it's the models that we're going to talk about today, my Space Hulk models. That was the first game that I painted to completion.
Nice.
In fact, it was actually the first game that I bought to get back into the hobby.
Nice.
Like I said, I was out of the hobby for a while, and I was more into board games than anything else. And in my search for board games, I found a listing for Space Hulk, and I thought, oh yeah, that's right, I remember that. And that's the one I bought, and thought, I think I would like to get back into painting these models again. I haven't painted in ages. So I started painting and kind of hammered it out and finished all the models for this game. And then I moved on to the next game and the next game, and then it just kind of snowballed out of control, and now I'm full on back into it. Yeah.
Nice. That's cool. So just before we get on to talking about Space Hulk, when you were thinking about getting back into the hobby, you mentioned you saw a listing for Space Hulk, so you picked that up, and you said you've stayed within kind of that kind of old Hammer Games Workshop era. So have you ever been tempted? Have you ever seen any kind of non-GW games, more modern ones, and kind of thought, hey, that'd be really cool to get into, but haven't?
Yeah, sure. So in my local area, I'm in Pennsylvania, and we have a large game convention that takes place a couple times a year. It's Historicon, and I've gone a few times, and I see all these beautiful historical game setups, and I think maybe that's what I want to try looking into. And I think that sometimes as gamers, I think gamers reach a certain age, and they think, some of these weird modeled games are a little there's like a certain social stigma to them, but historical games, that's maybe more grown up or more acceptable, and there's a draw to maybe get into those. But I have not yet successfully made that switch. I would like to, but maybe at some point I will. If I do, something like Bold Action is probably where I would end up.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Right, so let's start getting into Space Hulk then. So you mentioned that you saw it and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that. So did you play it and own it previously, or was that your first time that you'd bought it and got the minis?
Yeah, I had not played it. Actually, I think the only interaction that I had with Space Hulk prior to owning it was there was and you might be able to help me out with this, there was a video game that must have been played on a PC, because that was back in the day when a friend of mine had, really before console gaming, there was PC gaming, it was some Space Hulk game.
Well, I played one on the Sega Saturn. So that was a console, and it was like a kind of mostly like a first-person game, but you could zoom out to like more of a map view. So I'm not sure if you're talking about the exact one. There might have been a PC one previously, but the first interaction of it on a video game was playing on the Sega Saturn. So that would have been like 95, probably 94, 95.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm sure. So that's where I first saw it, and I was never really much of a video game player, and I still am not, but I enjoy watching other people play sometimes. And I just remember the tension of the game, because you would have these viewpoints of the different Marines in these little boxes, and you can kind of toggle back and forth from them. And once in a while, you would hear one of them scream, and the screen would go like staticky, and it's like, oh crap, where are they? And you're toggling around. And the other thing that was neat about that game was you could pause the game to make decisions, but then there was a little a little bar that would keep sliding, so you could only pause the game for so long before you had to go back to live action. And man, that was a real nail biter of a situation. So that's the memory that I have of Space Hulk prior to owning it.
Yeah, I think you need to give that a shout though. Like that was a really good game. That was my first interaction with it also, and I didn't even. And that was my first interaction. I didn't know at the time this is Games Workshop, this is a hobby thing. I thought the game was just a game. It was only as an adult that I was like, oh, I kind of linked those two things together. But this kind of links into Space Hulk in general. But what I think that game did really well is that I always remember playing with friends, like you said, like watching someone else do it, and I would do it and think about it and talking about it. And it would always be, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's not fine, it's over.
Right. And as soon as things start to get out of control, they get out of control fast, and bad. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, that's really cool. So sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so I'm going to mirror, exactly what you said. Like I've saw the game, didn't make the connection to Games Workshop, because I didn't get into the GW hobby until I found my first White Dwarf in a comic book store, and then. Then looking back, I saw it and thought, oh yeah, I remember that, but never bought it at the time. I don't know why. It just wasn't something that was really on my radar at the time. But I think I bought it, years later when I got back into the hobby, because like I said, I was buying board games, collecting board games, and there's a website, Board Game Geek, that I was really involved with, and I like to go down through the list of the top rated games, and I figured, well, these must be the best ones. I'll shop around here, and I was really surprised to see how high Space Hulk was rated, because it sits in a weird place, because it's a board game, but yet it's a miniature game. And I think this was prior to the days when board games came with plastic models, or a pawn was just literally a pawn, it wasn't a sculpted model.
That's cool. That's good. So you picked it up online. How excited were you to kind of get it and crack it open?
Well, The edition that I bought is the second edition. And at the time, this would have been prior to the third edition coming out. So I don't remember first edition Space Hulk at all. Mm-hmm. I remember seeing when second edition came out because that was more the era that I was, I guess, early, mid 90s, I guess. So, yeah. And then there was a gap of nothing for many years. I don't know when third edition Space Hulk came out, but there was a long gap there between second and third. Yeah. And the reason I bought second was because visually, I thought the boards looked good, the models looked good, and I'm all about the visual.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was really excited because I got a copy it was in complete condition, and all the models are there, and none of them were painted. So I was really stoked to jump right into it. And come to think of it, I bet I probably painted almost all of the models before I played my first game until I finally got around to playing with somebody. Nice. My first game, yeah.
That's cool. So talk us through the miniatures, because I played the majority of my time in third edition Space Hulk.
Okay.
But I think the miniatures in that set are really good, but they're also really obnoxious that they always hang over their square. So talk to us about.
I have opinions on that.
Yeah. So
okay.
Not that they're not amazing; they are amazing. But talk.
No, they are. Yeah.
So talk to us about what minis come in that second edition set and what it is you like about them.
Okay. Well, from the Gene Stealer side, that's easy because these Gene Stealer models have been in circulation forever, it seems. I think these are the same ones that came with first edition and carried over, of course, into second edition 40K and maybe even third. I don't even know when the Gene Stealer model got upgraded, but they're very they're very good. They're very utilitarian and they look good. The Space Marine models, if I recall, the first edition ones are not that great. They have kind of a dome head with like a little antenna sticking out their head, and to me, they just didn't really look like what I think of when I see a Terminator. Of course, they're more from the Rogue Trader era, but these Terminator models, they're technically like a multi-piece kit because there's the torso kind of snaps around the leg section, and if you don't paint it, if you don't glue it, technically you could kind of swivel that model around. I've been tempted to do that, but there's really no reason to, I suppose. And the models are just like peg fit, and they they fit right on to and they look like what I would think that a Terminator would look like based on the box art and such.
Yeah. So it's a great opportunity at this point to talk about like who are these characters and the general narrative of Space Hulk. So go on, it's your time to shine now.
Yeah.
So
well, I might end up asking you some questions about this because the Space Marines, to my understanding, are like the premier elite fighting force in the Imperial.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's like
Imperium of Man.
There was like an age of expansion where humanity kind of went into the stars, right? And it was all great and it was always all amazing. And we started encountering other races and things like that. And then kind of like stuff went wrong. There was lots of disagreements in the human race, and the superhuman warriors kind of fell out a little bit. And then you kind of spin on a couple of millennia, I think maybe 10 millennia maybe, and everything's terrible. So you got these superhuman warriors warriors that are just bouncing from place to place, just trying to hold everything together. Everything's desperate. Everything's last stand. And the Tyranids, which are the other side to the game, are very much just like aliens that are interested in just killing and consuming biomatter. So the idea of Space Hulk is that a Space Hulk is like a kind of combination of lots of different spaceships that have kind of melded together in what's called the warp. So to travel these huge distances, you go into the warp, and sometimes things go wrong, and it's very strange, it's very crazy, it's very chaosy, and sometimes these big spaceships kind of melt together. So a ship can go into the warp and never be seen for ages, and it might come back. And so the idea of this Space Hulk is that these superhuman warriors have been made aware of a Space Hulk, which is an amalgamation of all these different ships. And so on these ships, there's quite often a lot of valuable things, a lot of relics, a lot of technology, because they're in like an age of recession where everyone's forgotten how to make this amazing technology that we used to have. And so all of these relics are really important. So a group of these Space Marines have been sent to a Space Hulk to figure out what it is, what's going on, what they can potentially salvage from it. But the problem is that there's a whole bunch of Tyranids on there also. And that very much is reflected in the missions, right? So the missions, the first mission is a certain thing, and that leads on to other missions, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a while. But yeah, so first and foremost, the Space Marines are like, superhuman, genetically engineered kind of big guys, and the Terminators specifically are a heavier armored version of a Space Marine. So it's a huge hulking chunk of what they call ceramite, which is like kind of like a compound that's made that's very, very strong. And so yeah, there's a bunch of those. I think there's 2 squads, 12 guys, I think that's right. In
10.
Box. 10. And then there's a bunch of Tyranids, which are basically, they just like grasping, speedy guys that just kind of want to
claws and teeth, that's it.
Exactly right. They just want to tear open your armor and get to the nice gubbins inside, right? So did it do an okay job of explaining it? Would you say that's in keeping?
That was very concise. Yes, very good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what did you paint your miniatures like? Did you look at the box art and follow that, or did you get off-piste?
Yeah, I'm totally box art. So I have the Blood Angels, which are a faction of kind of a flavor of Space Marines, as you could imagine. They're red, and of course I still have my little sticker banners that go on the sergeants that are very bright and beautiful. And I don't know how these massive banners fit down a corridor of a Space Hulk, but I'm sure they do in some way or another.
And so yeah, that's a cool thing to note as well, is that like these miniatures are super cool and super interesting. And what I like about that second edition is that they are very polite, and they stay pretty much on their own squares. And as I mentioned, in the third edition, the models are amazing. They're individual art pieces in and of themselves. However, they kind of obnoxiously creep over the side of their square, so you often get like tangles of claws and bolters and all that kind of stuff, right? But before we kind of move on to anything else, is there anything else you want to mention about the miniatures? I mean, in later editions, there's like a little remote control car thing that came, and there's like a little grail and a dead guy on a throne. Is there any extra miniatures other than the kind of stock standard ones that we talked about?
Well, it's just the standard miniatures, although there are a bunch of there are things you interact with in the game. And it's interesting you brought that up, because as in later productions, of course, they're gonna make plastic representations of all these things, but in this particular version, it's just a cardboard token to represent like the little remote control cat, I think it's called.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And any computer consoles or canisters or whatever, those are just standard counter form.
Yeah.
The other thing I'll note about my models, if in case you want to know, I did not paint them with a goblin green base. However, I just thought that was a little too much to have them standing in a grass field on a Space Hulk. So mine are gray to match the metal industrial grates that they're walking around on.
Yeah, it's cool, man. Okay, cool. Right, so what direction do you want to go in now? I'll let you lead us. So do you want to talk about the mechanics of the game, or do you want to talk about like the progressive missions?
Yeah, well, let's talk about the mechanics of the game. And I just want to point out, because I know it's going to come up, something that I really love about this game. We talked about the theme. We know what the theme is of a game. And oftentimes when a game has, just about every game has both mechanics and theme, and it's very rare, I find, that you find a game that meshes those two things together so well. Recently I played a game with my son, the Star Wars deck building game. And as much as I enjoy deck building games and I love the Star Wars universe, I don't think at any point during playing that game did I say to myself, wow, this feels like Star Wars.
Okay.
Space Hulk, on the other hand, as I'm playing the mechanics of the game, it feels like the thing that it's supposed to be representing, that tension. And the thing that, let's just talk about the mechanics, I suppose. To play the game, the rules are very simple. You read through the rules and you pretty much know them. There's not a whole lot of reference, which I really like. In fact, there is a summary of play on the back of the rule book cover, and you could probably just read that and know everything you need to know about the game. The game takes place, there's a turn sequence. The Space Marines, for the most part, always go first. The first part of the Space Marine phase is the rolling of the command points. You just roll a d6, and that's how many command points you have to spend in excess of what you normally would. So typically a Space Marine is going to have 4 action points per model that he can use, and this command point roll is just a supplement to that you can use extra beyond those 4. Then you just go through and activate each of your models using these action points, and you can do things like moving, turning, firing your weapon, going on Overwatch, which just means you're kind of standing in place at the ready, waiting for anything that's going to happen. It kind of allows you to make an interrupt shooting on the other player's turn. And as you go through each of your models, I think this is in the rules. At least this is how I always play. That you continue moving all of that model, that one individual guy, using those 4 points. And then as soon as you shift off to do something else, then that guy's pretty much done. And the only thing that he can do is use those command points later to do something.
That's how I understand it.
Right. And I really like that. It reminds me of another favorite game of mine, Blood Bowl, in the fact that you have to decide what you're doing and the sequence sometimes of what you want to do. So if you, especially when it comes to those command points, I mean, you could, find yourself in a situation where you're using too many points elsewhere, and then when you really need it, they're gone because you used them doing something that wasn't as important.
I think that's really good. Really good. That's a really good point, isn't it? Where you finish with that guy. It's very strategic. Do you often use the egg timer? Was that in the second edition? So to stop people with kind of analysis paralysis, they kind of have this little egg timer where the Space Marines only got a certain amount of time to be able to choose. Do you use that or not?
Yeah, right. Well, let me point out a couple things. I believe the timer was something that was introduced in first edition, removed from second edition, brought back in third edition. However, you could easily port in and out any of these rules for any of these editions. So if I I said before, I like second edition because I like the aesthetic look of the board sections and the models, especially over first edition. But there are some things about first edition that I might be tempted to kind of carry over into the game that I'm playing.
Yeah.
I have played with the timer. I don't play with the timer when I'm playing remotely. And that's just because of the added pressure of my opponent telling me, how he wants to move things, and then I have to move them. And so, But the timer really ramps it up. You have to be comfortable with the rules, though, so that you don't need to be stopping and referencing anything. But I think once you really have everything down, that's something that you probably want to do.
Yeah. And it's more like I've always seen that timer not as necessarily a case of something negative for the players, like, oh, dude, come on, you're taking so long. I always kind of see the timer as like the idea that these Gene Stealers, the reason that the Gene Stealers thing, they don't have any armor really. They are just, looking to claw you to death. Their thing is their speed. So they are crazy fast. That's what makes it very difficult. So the Space Marines are like slow and pondering and very highly armored, very high firepower, but the aliens are the exact opposite of that. So whenever the time's involved, I'm seeing that as these aliens are moving so fast, and these guys have got to make decisions, like split-second decisions. Like that's the difficult thing. So they've got to make good decisions very, very quickly, and so it adds that level of pressure that. And then don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's a simulation, because obviously we're talking about aliens and superheroes in space. But so it's not really a simulation, but I think it simulates the time, and time in military operations is a giant factor. Like we can't just pause it and go and get a cup of tea and then come back later and then figure out what we need to do. Like we need to make a decision then, and that's quite often why people make a lot of bad decisions, because they don't have that time to think about it. So that's what I really like about the clock. That mechanic of the clock is like, dude, you got to make the decision now. Like it might not be the best thing, but just do that now. It's good. It's good little pressure.
And most of the decision making is being done by the Marine player.
Yes.
So if they had all the time in the world, that gives them a little bit of an advantage. So kind of taking that away and putting the pressure on, because oftentimes the Gene Stealer player, they're going to be capitalizing on the mistakes that the Marine player is making. So if you add that extra pressure of the time, that can lead to more mistakes, that can lead to more opportunities, and a little more balance maybe between the two sides.
So you talked about action points. So you said that each Marine generically comes with 4 action points. Moving forward 1 square is 1 point. Turning 90 degrees, I think, is 1 point. Stepping backwards is 2 points. And so this idea that it's a very tight, confined hallway that these highly armored kind of giants are striding down. So everything is difficult for them, the moving, the turning, all that kind of stuff. And so that's the moving and interacting. Obviously, opening a door is an action point, certain basic moves, and you can do any combination of moves until you've expended your action points and or your command points. So let's talk about shooting now specifically, because shooting is a very important part of it, and also talk about Overwatch. So how would we shoot, and what is the value of Overwatch, and then also talk about the dreaded jam.
Yeah, okay. Well, when it comes to shooting, of course, all of these GW games use 6-sided dice. The second edition that I have actually comes with special dice. And normally, when it comes to shooting, you would hit on I think it's a 6, I think. Since I have these special dice, there's one side of the die that has like a hit on it, 4 that have misses, and then one that has a special, I think this is called like a sustained fire or sustained shot dice. So if you were to shoot at something, you would need a 1 in 6 chance to hit it. If you miss and then you try to shoot again, that is where the sustained fire kicks in, because you're shooting at that same target again, and now it becomes a 2 in 6 chance of hitting, or you hit on a 5 or 6 to translate that. Now, in some editions of the game, that will continue to improve. So if you miss on that time, the third time, now it's you need a 4, 5, or 6. Second edition does not do that, though. It just caps it off at those 2, a hit and then a sustained hit. Now you're rolling 2 dice, however, to do that. So if I'm shooting at a group of Space Marines coming down a hall, I have these 2 dice. I roll them. If I manage to get 2 hits, the first hit is going to hit the Gene Stealer that I'm shooting at, and then I can actually carry over that second hit into a Stealer that's adjacent to him.
Yeah.
Now, again, these are little rules that may vary from edition to edition.
Yeah, sure.
So I think there's nothing wrong with borrowing from one edition into another.
Yeah.
So that's basically shooting. Okay. Overwatch, I mentioned before, is something that gives you an opportunity to fire on the Gene Stealer turn. So you set yourself up in a hallway, and you're kind of guarding a corridor at an intersection, and you're waiting for something to come around that corner. So if you're set on Overwatch, that takes 2 action points to do. You have a limited range now. Prior to this, in normal shooting, I think that the range is pretty much unlimited. You could continue firing down a hall forever, But on Overwatch, though, because of these dark corridors, you're limited to a range of 10. So as soon as something comes into your field of fire, within that 10, you roll. But in this case, you do not get that sustained fire. So even if you're shooting at the same thing again and again, you're only going to hit on that 1 in 6 chance.
Yeah.
Still using 2 dice. And I think the 2 dice is probably to represent the fact that you have a Storm Bolter, which is firing 2 different barrels simultaneously.
Yeah.
But when you're firing on Overwatch, you also have the dreaded Jam die, which is a die that only has 1 printed side on it, so it's a 1 in 6 chance. So in addition to rolling your 2 shots to fire, you're also rolling the Jam, and as long as it comes up blank, you're fine. But if the Jam does come up, you resolve any hits that would have resulted from that roll, but now you're kind of stuck because something has happened and your bolter no longer fires, and that's usually when bad things happen.
For sure.
Because the Gene Stealer can just kind of come up on you and take you out.
That's cool. And it's really important to note at this point is how the Gene Stealers are represented on the board. So obviously there's an individual miniature for each Space Marine, but the Tyranids often at the start are represented by a radar blip. So it's like a kind of a face-down token that moves around the board on the Gene Stealer turn. And then when those aliens come into view, so when they pop around the corner, that's when that blip is revealed. And it could just be 1 alien, but it could be 3. And so that can quite often change the balance of thing. Like if you've kind of presumed that a blip is it's just 1 alien, and then you're like, no, it's 3. That changes the outlook of things. And so the shooting thing, you pretty much nailed it. I've not really played 2nd edition at all. As I mentioned, I kind of played 3rd edition. And in 3rd edition, it's slightly different, but the kind of same principles still occur. The jam mechanic in this 3rd edition is that if you roll a double, so if you roll double 4, double 6.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's when the jam. That's when the
which
jam
is still statistically it's the same. It's a 1 in 6 chance. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So cool, man. So that's your kind of Storm Bolter, and the aim of the Space Marines is to keep the Gene Stealers really far away. You do not want them to be coming close, and so I really love the Overwatch mechanic because it's like it's like you're setting up. It's like I always kind of imagine, again, I'm not sure if this is thematically how it's supposed to be, but I always imagine that it's like the aliens are coming in waves. And so it's like the Space Marines step into the mission and then they've got a little bit of time to set up before the first wave arrives, and then they manage to kind of maybe chew through that wave, and then they've got time to move a little bit, and then another wave comes. So it's all about this kind of like scuttling from place to place and setting up before the next wave comes. And so sometimes you have an amazing turn where, you know, you set up, you know, you got all the action points you need, especially with the command point. Yeah, cool, we're good. You know, we're kind of looking down this hallway, we're kind of stepping back from that intersection so that if anything comes around the corner, we're okay. You got to try and fend them off and keep them as far away as possible. A little bit like a guy at work that you don't particularly like. It's like, okay, right, I can live with that, but I just need to keep him really far away. If he's far away, that's fine. And then you jam, and then it all kind of goes wrong. But there are other weapons that you could potentially use. So talk to us about the special weapons that the Space Marines could potentially have, and if they exist in 2nd edition. I'm interested to hear about any Space Marine war gear that could be there.
The Flamer is probably the most powerful, most tactically advantageous weapon that the Marines have. And this is where we get some variation between editions. I particularly really enjoy how 2nd edition handles the Flamer. And that is, and I'll just kind of talk from the 2nd edition point of view. In a squad of Marines, you have 5 models in a squad. A sergeant who is armed with a power sword and Stormbolter. 3 that are armed with Stormbolter and a Power Fist, and then a final model armed with a Heavy Flamer and Power Fist. And that's typically your squad, and you're going to have 2 of those squads in most every mission. The Heavy Flamer has a canister of highly volatile, highly flammable liquid, you know, as you can imagine a massive flamethrower would. And it has enough ammo in there to fire 12 shots or 12 markers worth of flame. And this is where, again, 2nd edition gets a little more tactical, because if you want to, you can just squeeze the trigger a little bit and get one little token of flame out there, or you could just empty the whole canister and unload 12 massive tokens of flame. And this flame does a number of things. For one, you can kind of like tailor where you want that flame to go, as long as you can see it. Yeah. So you cannot fire like around a corner. All the squares that you're dropping down flame onto, you have to be able to see it, and it has to be within a certain range. I think that range is 12. But don't quote me on that. And the nice thing I like about this is you can actually stack up some of these tokens into a region. So if there's a corridor that there's some Marines or some Gene Stealers coming down, and you need to kind of you can create like a wall of flame that will prevent the Gene Stealers from passing through that area.
Yes.
You could also, of course, use it to like drop flame onto the Gene Stealers themselves and destroy them. Now, there is a rule in 2nd edition where a Gene Stealer will automatically be destroyed if it's hit by a flame. However, it has a 1 in 6 chance of dodging out of the way. And but that is only if you leave it a spot that it could dodge to. Right. So in a corridor, if you lay down flame on the Gene Stealer and one behind it and one in front of it, there's nowhere for it to go. So it's gonna be toast.
Yeah.
So yeah, having only 12 markers in a canister and having 2 canisters total, it kind of limits you in what you can do. So although they are extremely powerful, a Heavy Flamer does not have a Stormbolter, so he can't go on Overwatch, and he can't fire indefinitely.
I really like that.
So
That's really cool. It's a really cool weapon, and it's important to note that it sticks around for a turn as well. So you can essentially, there's times where you might fire your flamer, not to kill anything, just to block off a certain section so you can move through safely. And I'm not sure if that exists in second edition that it sticks around, but in third edition, definitely for sure. And in third edition, it's more of like a one bigger blip. So it's like a big blip. You just kind of put the blip down. I think it covers like 4 squares. I think maybe 5.
Okay.
An intersection, and it sticks around. So that's really cool because again, that tactical nature of the game. It's like, where do you put your flamer guy? Because at the start of the mission, you choose the order of your guys that come in, so where do you put your flamer guy? And it's very tactical. And there's times where I've gone through a mission. This is very, very rare. There's times where I've gone through a mission and never fired my flamer because I've never needed it. And there's times where I've really, really needed it, and you run out of ammunition. And that's really, really bad. Cool. Yeah. So the flamer is one. And you mentioned that in second edition though, there's no autocannon. Is that correct?
There is not. However, there are, I know, White Dwarf articles, Citadel Journal articles that do include assault cannons and chain fists and all that stuff. Yeah.
So I've got some people that are going to be very angry listening to this. I've said autocannon a number of times. It's an assault cannon. Yeah. So
assault cannon. Yeah. I see. Yeah, sure. Assault cannon.
Yeah. So the assault cannon is similar to the flamer. In the sense of it's a very powerful weapon, but it's got limited ammunition. And in the edition that I've played, you roll 3 dice instead of 2, and I think you kill them on a lower dice number. But that's also got the opportunity to blow up when you reload. And I think it's because of like the heat of the barrel and all that kind of stuff. But if you reload, it's got a potential of blowing up and killing your guys. That's always pretty fun when that happens, because it's often when you really, really need it, you reload to go again. So that's cool. But there's also some other weapons. In the third edition, the certain sergeant has got a storm shield and a thunder hammer, but you mentioned that the sergeant in the second edition has got a power sword. So let's kind of set the scene that we've talked about how the Space Marine player is looking to keep the aliens as far away as possible so that they've got time to kind of dismantle them, right? They've got time to take as many shots as possible to keep them as far away as they can, because the aliens don't have any weapons at all. Aliens try and do the opposite. They're trying to get up close and personal because that's where they really shine. So let's say that, in a perfect world, you keep the aliens far away, you go from point A to point B, achieve your objective, end the mission, everything's fine, everyone goes home for tea and medals. But quite often, probably more often than not, something goes wrong and the aliens get in contact, they get into melee. So talk to us about what happens when the Tyranids, or I know sometimes it's initiated by Space Marines. I'm not sure why it would ever happen. Maybe it's some sort of crazy happy-go-lucky guy.
If you jam. The only reason as a Marine that you would want to engage in close combat is if you had no other option and you had to. Yeah, but if 2 models are adjacent to each other and they're facing each other, well, I shouldn't say that. I'll get into that in just a second. If they're next to each other, they can engage in close combat, in which they roll to see whose roll is higher. Yeah. However, the Marine only gets 1 die, and the Gene Stealers get 3 die. Now you don't add those; you're just looking for the high result. So, obviously, statistically, rolling 3 dice is much better than rolling 1. Like I said, the high, the high roll wins. Now, if a Gene Stealer just kind of snuck up behind a Space Marine and engaged in combat, you do that thing, roll the dice. But in that case, if the Space Marine won, like let's say he rolled a 6, and the highest roll that the Gene Stealer had was less than that. Even though the Marine won, he couldn't kill the Gene Stealer because he wasn't facing him. Yeah, he'd have to turn to face him.
But I love close combat. Close combat is my favorite part of the game, because if you are getting into close combat as the Space Marine player, it's dire, right? You're probably not going to be okay, right?
But when you win, it is so glorious. Yeah. Oh, it's glorious when you win. Yes.
Every kill that you get as a Space Marine player from a Tyranid is like everyone I've ever played the game with ever celebrates, and that's the people on both sides. So there's times where I've been a Tyranid player and like a Space Marine kills an alien and I'm celebrating with them, so like, mate, that's amazing, right? And I kind of want to go back to something that you mentioned quite a long time ago, how when you're playing remotely and you kind of rooting for the other guy, this is something I really love about, I'm not sure if it's unique to this game, but it doesn't happen, but it doesn't matter who I'm playing, I think everyone's rooting for the Space Marine player. So it's like, it's kind of like, it's a little bit like golfers, I would say. I think there's a certain level of competition that exists within golfers where it's like, you're not really playing each other, you're playing the course. And that's what I feel like when I'm playing Space Hulk, is that like, we're playing the mission. And I'm obviously the negative force trying to stop you from doing that, and I'm trying to play the aliens well. But I kind of I just want to see what happens. And so there's numerous times in close combat where it's like, you're gonna die probably, but when you win, amazing. And also you mentioned there about how an alien might sneak up behind Space Marine. That happens semi regularly, I would say. Yeah. Because you might have had one guy going down a hallway, he crosses an intersection, and obviously an intersection that aliens might come in at either side of the intersection, so you might stand a guy a little bit further back from that intersection on Overwatch, just looking after his tail, but then he might jam on Overwatch. And I just get this idea, this horrible situation where, you've been sent down a hallway and someone said, "Don't worry, mate, I got you back, don't worry about it." You're like, "Yeah, okay." Yeah. And then suddenly this kind of horrible alien jumps on your back and kind of claws you to pieces, and your dying thought would be, "Dude, you said you had my back there. What's going on?" Yeah, man. So it's super cool, and that you mentioned like the kind of the pinnacle of close combat, whereas that exact scenario happens, and you manage to roll a 6, and you don't kill the alien, but you manage to fend it off, and then you turn and face it, and that you've got to celebrate that moment, because quite often aliens have a number of different action points, and they can attack, and they can attack, and they can attack multiple times in one of their turns. So it's like you've fended them off, and you turn and face them, but you've still got to fight them again and then maybe a couple of times. And that's what makes the game really cool. And it's never really happened. I can't remember a time where you fend someone off multiple times. Usually it's short and sweet, but it's just so good. That game mechanic of the melee is just so brutal, so quick, so stacked against the Space Marine player. It's just, it goes wrong very quickly, right? But it's good. It's fun.
Well, we were talking about the weapons, and I'll mention that sergeant who has the power sword, which is a close combat weapon, and the bonus of that is you get a +1 to your roll, which is helpful, and it also allows you to parry, which is to force the Gene Stealer to re-roll one of their die. So it's a slight assist that the sergeant has there over in close combat.
But it's also dangerous, I know, in 3rd edition, because you mentioned before about your command die. So your sergeant is the one that will roll, well, not he doesn't roll it, but you roll that dice based on the influence of the sergeant's leadership. So if both of your sergeants go down, you don't get that command roll anymore, because you don't have the effect of their leadership. So it's dangerous sometimes, because you think they're better in close combat, I'll push them forwards. But if both of your sergeants die from both the squads, you no longer get that roll. So there's times where I've kind of tried to be a little bit conservative with a sergeant. You don't get the benefit of their close combat weapon, but you still get the benefit of their command kind of dice roll. That's really cool. Is there anything else you want to talk about mechanics before we kind of move on to the last part of our conversation about the structure of the missions and things?
No, I think I kind of want to get into the real heart of the game, which I think is the missions.
And it's really important to note here is that, we're over an hour with our chat so far, and I feel like we're only really scratching the surface. There's so many cool stories and cool things that have happened in games, but I guess it's a real kind of badge of merit for the game that there's so many things it could talk about. So let's talk about the missions, because I'm the same as you. Like, the missions are what interest me and what keep me kind of coming back to the game. And I really like how they they escalate. And I don't know,
Yes.
it is kind of a campaign, but it's kind of not as well. It's just like kind of progressively more difficult and escalating missions, right? So talk to us about the first mission, maybe talk about how they progress, and maybe pick out your favorite mission.
Okay. So I'll note that, again, of course, I'm talking second edition. There are in this a total of 18 missions. So that's 3 campaigns, and there's like a little story that goes with each one. And so that would be 6 missions in each of those 3 campaigns. And it's the third campaign that has some campaign rules. So you'll play mission number 1, and then when you go to mission number 2, it will say, if the Space Marines player won the game in the first mission, here are the changes that you're going to make in the second mission.
Nice.
And they go on through that. Okay. So, yeah, the missions will... now, you talked earlier about the feel of cheering on the other player, and, kind of that that camaraderie kind of feel, even though it's competitive. And I think the reason for that is because 2 things. One, you're not really constructing your own army and bringing your own army into it. You're just playing the mission that's laid out. And the other thing is that the game suggests that after you play through a mission, you swap sides and play through the mission again as the other. Mm-hmm. So, so all these missions give a little very narrative background of what's happening, and I just love the way it's written. I don't know who wrote this particular edition that I have, who wrote the all the background fluff text to it, but it really is immersive, and the mission will tell you how to set up the board. The board is modular. There's all these little pieces of like a jigsaw puzzle that fit together, some rooms, corridors, doorways, etc. And there's always an entry point where the Space Marines will enter. There's some kind of objective that they're supposed to do, whether it might be flame a particular room, or hold out for a certain number of turns, or exit some models off of a certain exit point, pick up something and carry it somewhere else. Quite a wide variety of different things that you're asked to do. And the Gene Stealer's task is literally just to stop the Marine from doing that thing. Mm-hmm.
Eat them. It's not, eat them. That's
right. Exactly.
Really easy. Eat
right.
the guys.
Exactly. Right. And as far as the missions go, let me just talk about one that's okay. The very first mission in the book, it's almost like an introductory mission. It's called Suicide Squad, and you're really only given one squad of 5 Marines, and it's a pretty simple task. Well, it seems simple. You're supposed to get, you have, like I said, one squad of Marines. There's a room kind of down the other end, and it has some information in it that needs to be destroyed. So your task is to get your flamer model down there and apply flame to all every square in that room. Now, again, I'm talking second edition. There are 9 squares in that room. So if there are 9 squares in a room and you have a total of 24 total markers of flame, that means you only have at max 15 shots. So you can't just send that flamer headlong down in and blast everything, because he's going to run out of ammo. He needs the support of all the other models to guard corridors, to kind of watch his back. And the cool thing about this mission is you need to lead off with a non-flamer model, someone with a storm bolter. And then at some point during that trek down the hallway, your flamer is going to have to get around in front. So just that little logistical dance of moving one model around in front of the others, and that really puts you in a vulnerable spot. And it's really cool how this particular mission condenses all of that into one small little mission. And usually, like I said, it's that 1 or 2 turns where you're trying to coordinate yourself and move yourself around. That is the make or break moment in that whole mission.
And there's a lot of those moments in the game. And that's what I really like. I always think about how you kind of, you come back from the supermarket and you get all the shopping bags out of your car, and then you got to get your house key out of your pocket and get it into without the bags kind of breaking and all your oranges and apples go all over the floor. It's kind of like that. It's like none of the individual tasks are particularly difficult in and of themselves, but with the time that you've got and with the potential that could go wrong, it's like that's what brings it. It's like, when am I going to bring the flamer up? What intersection am I going to hold at? Where am I going to put that guy? It's like this strategic thinking that none of those decisions individually are difficult, but when they combine together, especially with the effect of the time and where the aliens might be hiding around a corner, there always comes a break point where it's like the mission is won or lost on this turn or on the actions that I use in this. Especially when you get good at the game, it all kind of comes up to this point. Right? Even if you play perfectly, it could all still go wrong because it ultimately is a dice game, right?
Yeah, like for example, there might be a moment. Let's say I use my flamer, and there might be a moment where I roll a high number, and I think I'm actually going to spend. I have a lot of command points. I'm actually going to spend some of those just to reload my flamer. Even though I still have some extra in the tank, I don't know if I'm going to roll ones for the next 2 turns, and I might not have that luxury to do it. You're making decisions based on what's happening right now and what do I need to happen later, and you never know.
In England, we would say you've got to choose when to push your luck. So
exactly.
I remember as a kid, I'd do certain things, and my parents would say, "Hey, man, you're pushing your luck," and that basically means is you're putting yourself in a potentially dangerous situation here that you might not want to be part of. So it's all about kind of being quite conservative, and then choosing the right time to try and push your luck. And then the question is always, did I push my luck too far or not? So that's cool, man. So you mentioned that the missions kind of start with quite smaller, condensed, easier versions. And
just
then
that first one,
Yeah, and then these sprawl, right? And the story kind of expands and grows. I always remember the campaign for 3rd edition, I think it's called The Sword of Damnation, where it's like, and I mentioned at the start when we did the narrative thing, is that the Space Marines don't really know what this Space Hulk is. It's just like it's popped up, and there's rumors about what it might be, but they don't actually know. And part of the whole campaign is like, what is this ship, and what does it contain? And later on in the campaign, I don't necessarily want to spoil things too much necessarily, but it's like quite an important thing. The Sword of Damnation is a ship, and that's quite an important thing, right? So talk to us about how the complexity maybe evolves through the missions.
In my experience, the rules don't change. We're not adding additional rules, but there are maybe additional elements. Like, for example, I'm kind of flipping through the book right now, and I see there's a rescue mission here, and there's this thing called the CAT. I don't even know, the Cyber Altered Task Robot. And in this case, we're supposed to pick this thing up and carry it off somewhere else. So that adds another wrinkle here. If a Marine is killed while carrying this thing, another model can pick it up and carry it along. But if it's not being carried along, it will kind of act on its own, and it might wander off in a different direction that you don't want it to go in. So there's fun little extra rules like that here or there.
The maps get more complex, not necessarily.
Oh, absolutely, bigger, yeah.
But there's more points. There's more potential ambush points. So quite often, what happens is the Tyranid player is just hiding around a corner, waiting for an opportune time to kind of jump. There's quite often like a standoff situation where there's a Marine on Overwatch looking down a hallway. And again, this is another reason why I really like the game, is that like the Marine player knows that there's a blip on the radar screen, and the Tyranid knows that in this hallway they can maybe just look around and they know. And quite often there's a whole bunch of cat and mouse where it's like the Tyranid player is just waiting for that Marine to move off or fixing that Marine in place. And that's an important thing for Tyranid players, is that you might just fix them in place. You know, just having a blip, even if it's just like with one guy. I mentioned that there's a 1, a 2, and a 3. I don't think it goes above 3. I'm not sure. It might go to 4. I'm not sure. But you might just pin down one Marine with a 1 Tyranid blip. And that might not seem like a big thing, but fixing someone in place, especially because the Marine player quite often has to be moving from point A to point B, fixing someone in place. I always think that would be like a horrible thing as well, to like stand, like someone said, stand at the end of this hallway, just watch that, and you know something's there, and then someone's saying, dude, you need to move now. It's like, no, I don't want to move. I don't want to move closer to this guy. I don't want to present my side or present my back to this guy. There's something there. It's like, no, we need to move through. You need to go. At some point, you need to make that decision to go. That's kind of sucks too. So yeah, the maps get a little bit more complex. There's more entry points for the Tyranid players. There's more of those ambush points. Missions maybe potentially get harder. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And what's nice about it is just the fact that, like I said, you're encouraged to play through a mission, swap sides, and do it again. You know, so it's if you have a mission, you think, oh, this one was easy. Well, okay, well. You try it now, you know, and you
or the opposite.
Do it again. Yeah,
it's like you're the Space Marine. There's times where I've been the Space Marine player, and then I get annihilated quite easily. And then my mate's like, hey, you're so bad at that. I'm like, okay, yeah, let's switch it around, see what happens. And sometimes they're really good at it, but then other times they go, yeah, it's hard, isn't it? You're like, yeah, and you got that kind of empathy moment, right? You know, it's like, that was hard. That did go very wrong very quickly. So, yeah, that nature of that, it's not possessive. Like, I am not the Space Marines. Like, the Space Marines are the Space Marines, and the Tyranids are the Tyranids, but I'm not really them. I'm not really the Space Marine player. Really, I am, but they're not mine. I just get the idea that we're both watching an unfolding narrative. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I really love about the game, is that, you know, you feel like you're with your mates having a good time. You know, there's there's so much pressure, yet so little pressure. How can a game have both of that? You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of like think about, we used to go bowling as a kid, and then next to the bowling alley there was like a little arcade, and there was a game called Sega Rally, and I always remember kind of similar feelings. My brother would play, and I'd just be rooting for him, you know, on the side. I'm like, come on, you know, you can get a new score, or you can, you know, complete and get to the next level. And it's kind of like a similar thing. It's like you feel like you're rooting for the other player, and it's a little step up because you're actually actively working against the other player, but you still kind of want them to do good. Like, you know, it's really cool. But anyway, as we kind of begin to wrap up our time, you know, the hours kind of rattled by so quickly. Is there anything about the game that you really like that we feel that what do you feel that we haven't talked about yet?
Well, I'm not going to talk about strategy because I think that it's something that you need to discover for yourself.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And I'm probably not very good at the game, you know. I have, because like I said, most of the time I play, I'm playing as the Gene Stealers, you know, and the thing that I love about this game is you know, we talked at the beginning of our conversation about remote gaming and how I, you know, really enjoy that. And I think I've probably had the most fun playing Space Hulk, just because of that personal feeling that, you know, that you get. And I still, some of my greatest gaming memories, I think, are based around this game. I had a buddy of mine. We played a game, and we started off the mission, and he just had terrible luck. I think I took out like a couple Marines, you know, right away, and he was kind of, you know, cursing his dice, you know, because he rolled a jam and then another jam, and I said, listen, we just started. You want to start over again? You know, because I could tell he was really, really pissed about the dice. And he's like, no, let's play it out, you know. And I was like, okay. And I kind of felt bad because I was like, okay, I'm going to, you know. whatever, we'll play it out. And then at some point, things started to turn, and I was like, okay, this isn't going to be as much of a cakewalk as I thought, Yeah. And at some point, I kind of joked around, like, I better be careful here because you might actually be able to do something here, Yeah. And things just kept progressing, and then I started worrying because, like, I almost always lose, to him. And I thought, well, surely I'm going to win this game, right? And then it kind of got out of hand, and I was like, wait a minute. And I remember saying early on, like, if you win this game, I will never hear the end of it, And sure enough, like, the dice just kept, things just kept working and working away. And man, by the end, the mission was he had to get a Marine off the table edge, off the other side. I think just one or two. It's all he had to do. And like I said, it was that moment where I was like right in his face, and I mean, he was like literally walking backwards, off the board, to try to like fend off, in close combat, and he kept rolling so well, and man, we were hooting and cheering as he won that game, and I said, that's it, I'm gonna paint this model, I'm gonna put another sticker on that, like a transfer. I have to put like a little purity seal or something, on that model to say like this is the great accomplishment that he made, at this. So
that's cool, man. That's so cool.
Yeah, a lot of great memories playing this game.
I completely agree. It's one of the best games I've ever played, and I can't say that I've ever had a bad game of it. I can't say that there's ever a situation where either the game has designed a negative situation or a player's been allowed to create a negative situation, either knowingly or unknowingly. It's just always been really, really fun. We kind of skirted over it a little bit at the start, and we said about how the rules are simple, but they really, really are. And yet there's so much depth to it. It's so much fun. And even when you feel like you're getting it, there's still opportunities for all to go wrong. Like, because even if you did everything perfectly, as a Space Marine player, there's still opportunities where it could all go wrong. And then equally, even if you're doing everything wrong, there's still an opportunity to really get through. And it's those extremes that are really good. And the final thing that I want to say that I think the game does really well is that, well, it's two things. Like, the first thing is about how it's like the exact opposites of the separate teams. So, like, the Space Marine Terminator player is like, every guy is super, super valuable. And then, but I love playing the Tyranids because it's like, every single alien is completely disposable. Like, I do not care about you. Like you just said there about, I'm going to put a little purity seal. This is going to be my guy. I'm going to call him this, and he's going to get a little stripe on his knee pad to denote he's a veteran. It's like, Tyranids do not care about that whatsoever. They just want to throw everything at you in a wave and hopefully just overwhelm you in that. And just that whole thing as a narrative is just compelling, isn't it? It's like, we do not care. We're just going to throw it at you. And then the other side is, no, these guys are very, very valuable. They're very expensive. They're very finite. We don't have an amount, and I think that's really good. And then the final thing is how you've mentioned it quite a few times, is that how the game encourages you to play the same mission from the opposite perspective. I think that is really a masterstroke, I would say. That's cool.
Yeah. And there's probably going to be some people that say, oh, there's only 18 missions. Like, what do you do after you play your 18th game? Then what? You can play these same missions again and again and still, get a lot of enjoyment out of them. Yeah.
And there's also a whole bunch of fan-made stuff. You can.
Oh, absolutely.
Bunch of fan-made stuff that you can go. But yeah, I'm between editions, to be honest. I have my third edition, and I cherished that for a long, long time. But someone offered to buy it at a very, very good price, and it was nicely painted, so I did. And I anticipated that there would be a new edition of Space Hulk come out when the new edition of Warhammer 40k came out, because the Warhammer 40k edition came out, the starter box set came out with Space Marines and Tyranids in it. So at some point in the future, I might pick up the old third edition to kind of repaint it and kind of go through those same joys. Or maybe there might be another edition in the future, I'm not sure, but it'll always remain an outstanding game, and I can't believe that they will leave it alone forever. I'm pretty sure they're going to tinker with it at some point in the future, because it's just such an amazing thing. And one thing that's just jumped into my mind now, and it's really actually quite prevalent, is that it's a standalone boxed entity that doesn't change. You don't need to buy a new codex, you don't need to buy new this, you don't need to buy new that. It's just an outstanding gaming experience in a self-contained box that you can just enjoy and leave it for a few years and come back and enjoy it again. It's just brilliant. It's really good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there you go. All wrapped up. Thanks a lot for coming onto the show, Chris. It's been great, and I feel that we could have spoken for another couple of hours. There's a whole lot of stuff that we haven't talked about. In third edition, there's a librarian. Gets involved. There's like a kind of psychic powers guy.
Yeah.
And we mentioned about a few different weapons. There's a storm shield and thunder hammer, and there's a few different bits. But that's also quite good about how you can have different editions, and different editions have their own accent and their own flavor, so to speak. So
yeah. And like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with importing any of those rules from one to another. I mean, I believe I would like to see a comparison of the different mission books and how because I think first edition and second are pretty much the same. I don't think there's any differences in the missions between. So I'd be curious to get a hold of the third edition book and see how, if anything, they modify in the missions. Probably not much.
Yeah. Have you ever bumped into any games that give you similar feels in the same, the similar mechanics or similar feeling?
Yeah. Well, again, my gaming knowledge is limited, but Blood Bowl is one that has the same tactical feel, of I gotta plan the order that I want to do things here, and the pushing your luck kind of thing. And cheering for each other's success or loss. Yeah, that's my other second favorite game. I would say would be.
There's the game that I cherish and I've played the heck out of, and I hold to the same level of esteem as Space Hulk, and it's called V-Sabotage, or used to be called V-Commandos. I
encourage
you to check that out. It's amazing.
Yeah. That's one you can play that solo, is that correct?
Yeah, it's like a solo or co-op game. So no one plays the opposition. The opposition is kind of like procedural. They have procedural things that they do. But it gives me very similar feelings and very similar vibes, and it's a game that I've played for hundreds and hundreds of hours at this point. So
if you're listening, definitely
along,
one I'm going to look at.
Yeah. So that's more of a World War II vibe. So if you're more of a historical player, if you're listening along, and you don't necessarily
that might be the one that gets me into historical games. Yeah.
But what's good is there's two editions of that. There's just a token version, which is just kind of like a card tokens you move around, but they also have a miniatures edition that you can pay a little bit extra and get some minis as well. But anyway, Chris, that's all we got time for. It's been great meeting you, and this is the wonder of the modern age, that we've never spoke, we never met, we're not friends. I'd like to think we're friends now. Through the wonder of modern technology, we've been able to connect and have a great conversation about something that we share a passion for, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, very much so.
Well, have a great rest of the weekend, and we'll maybe speak to you again in the future about all the reasons why you love V-Sabotage. Who knows?
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, sounds good.
All right, take it easy. Thanks a lot for your time.
Have a good night. Great, bye.